this metro project that is being done in New South Wales, train line that will go to the western suburbs of Sydney. I get it. If you're outside of Sydney, instantly there he is again banging on about New South Wales. No. Hear me out. Because Channel 9 had an interesting exchange with a man who is in his 80s, whose house is about to, well, just get completely pushed away. Will he be compensated for it? Sure. But is it the house where he has all of his family members? You betcha. Now, I want you to think about the treatment of this bloke versus the treatment of a business that is now going to sue the state government for $100 million. Do you think this guy's got access to those type of lawyers?
They are the heartbreak behind the government's shiny new metro. Martino Colachico has lived at his 5-dock home since 1966.
What I can say, I've been working for this country. I am Australia.
All his neighbours recently cashed up by selling their properties to Woolworths. The 88-year-old was standing firm until yesterday, when he was given no choice.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the government about what's happening?
This nearby stretch of shops will also be demolished to make way for the new metro station.
Was it a surprise?
Of course it is, yeah. It is. No, it's people's livelihood.
Fred Sasson has tended to his vegetables in the backyard of his Westmead home for the past 45 years. Now he too will be forced to sell.
I've been here all my life. Yeah, I don't like to move from here.
Now, another part of this train project is going to see that Tiffany's, you know, the great sellers of silver photo frames, rings and all of those other things that the missus says you have to buy, but you go, how much does it cost? Well, they look like they're going to get bounced out of their location in central Sydney, so they're off to the courts, where court documents show the company wants to force the government to pay $109 million because of loss attributable for disturbance. The claim comes and includes relocation costs of $57 million and $2 million in operating costs and $41 million in additional expenses after the move. Now, when train lines have to be built, we get it. At some point, you have to buy something from someone, you have to move people into different places. But as we saw with the Speedway, they didn't know about it until the very last minute because the media strategy, to avoid it leaking, announce, deal with it later. 6 months when nobody cares, start to release those, computer graphics of that wonderful new train line and what it's going to look like. Now, this is your patch, Daily Telegraph territory, James.
Yep.
And, I mean, we want the infrastructure built. You have to have some disturbance that goes with it. But what do you think of this disturbance?
I think it doesn't matter whether or not you're this old bloke in 5-dock or if you're Tiffany's downtown in the CBD. The fact is, this government has managed this project terribly in terms of dealing with people who are going to be affected by this. It hasn't just been the Metro, it's been WestConnex before that, it's been any number of things. You can say, yeah, we need the train line, we need the roads. I don't quibble with that. But, you know, the history is that they have had huge compensation disputes because they say, oh, we're going to pay a fair compensation, but what is fair? What can you put a price on a guy who's 88 years old and probably wanted to die in that house? Well, there's no amount of money that can make up for that. And it just, I think, sends the message that, well, if you're just the little people, you know, you don't really own your house. Ultimately, it's the government, because if a road needs to go through there, you're out of luck.
James, what do you do here? Because obviously Melbourne's going through the same experience where you're about to build something right on the outer rims. That means you've got to move some things that are there. You've got to disadvantage some people that go, how do you do this? Or is this, you know, discomfort the price of it? Because we're talking about older people here.
Yeah, it's sad. The problem with our court system is, of course, is that it deals with quantum in terms of, you know, what money you've lost. So if Tiffany's can prove that it's suffered this loss of the $100 million having to move its offices, it will get it. But you can't put a price, as James said, on the pain and distress for someone in their 80s. I mean, there's no money value that he's losing. It's just incredibly distressing and incredibly sad. And there's really no good way of doing this. I mean, we've tried both ways here. At one point, when there was an announcement the government was building something, they announced it at a press conference, and the media raced around and told people before, the government could tell them they were losing their houses. And so the next time the government down here went door to door with the information. Of course, then it leaked, and then they were criticised for for keeping it a secret and not making a public announcement. Like there's no good way about this. It is terribly sad.
Yeah, I mean, Caroline, again, money is going to have to come into this. James is right, money doesn't change anything. But I certainly hope that the money that you get is the money of the value of the property the day before the announcement, not the day after the announcement.
Yeah. I mean, look, he probably made a bad financial decision in not selling up when all his neighbours did, but ultimately he's got a sentimental attachment to that home and no one can hold that against him. I think the government has to be careful. I mean, obviously, they promised to be a government about building infrastructure, and that's a big reason why they were re-elected. But they're also facing a lot of questions about a minister at the moment who's profiting from these new metro stations.
Well, he ends up having this is it, John Sidoti, who's sort of on the sidelines at the moment because of these investigations and others. He happens to own property that's just on the other side of the line. Just on the other side of the line that means we don't take your properties away. Yeah. And when he was asked by Channel 7 a couple of days ago, he's doing the whole sort of push the camera out of the way treatment, which from your time in A Current Affair you would remember. It's always a great look.
Never do that.
Just always a great look, isn't it? Yeah.